So, a little change of scenery here because I am impatient. My wife is doing homework with my son and she's loud as fuck. So I can't do this in my normal spot. Anyways, I just barricaded myself in the bedroom. So, gonna talk about DIY Mike's K20 or K20 VTEC killer, right? Now, this was brought to my attention through a commenter who was using it as a way to tell me that I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. When I was talking about the other day, like you're not making 200 wheel horsepower on just dropping in those cams on a K20E3. He was trying to be a smartass and telling, like, using that as a weapon to say you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. That setup makes power, when actually that motherfucking setup just reinforces exactly what I was talking about. Okay, first off, I have never seen any DIY Mike's videos. You know, like I've said a bunch of times, I don't really watch a lot of Honda stuff or car stuff anymore on YouTube. But today I happen to be on the treadmill, first time in a while. Since I've been out of work, I haven't been working out, and I watch my weight like 2 or 3 times a day. So, and if it hasn't got to my okay, you need to work out point, I haven't been stressing it. It got to my okay, you need to work out point, so I stressed it. I got on, did my 3-mile run, and in the meantime, I was looking for videos. I'm trying to get myself hyped back up into doing more work again. So I saw some car shit, and I was watching some race videos. And the DIY Mike video came up in suggestions, right? And I think it's because recently I searched for it, because when the guy told me about the engine, I did look for it and I couldn't find it because they don't really have it tagged in a clickbaity way for you to find it, which I think is a mistake. They should have that, very specifically titled so that way people can find this, because if you look for VTEC killer shit, you don't find much, and that's definitely the highest horsepower one I've ever seen. But the whole thing, for those of you that may have seen it, and for the casual fans, this is the people who don't really pay attention to the engine building part of the engine build. They just look at the name of what the engine is and the end result. There's a lot of nuance involved. This was an advanced build. Using all OEM parts, yes. No, mostly all OEM parts. Mostly OEM parts. But there was some very key changes and differences that make this a super advanced build. This is not a K20A3 with a VTEC killer setup. This is a bolt-ons Z3 with a ported and polished head, and valve springs and retainers. Okay, so that's a huge difference, an enormous difference. First off, this is going on along the lines of what what I want to do, which is using the A2 or the Type S pistons to be high compression, right? So you're talking about the A3 in stock form is 9.8 and change to compression, I think. I always fuck that up, but it's 9 something compression, right? The Type S compression is 11 and change. Now, if you use the booty VTEC head, because the way the design is, it's 11.5. That's Type R compression. That is a big ass difference. All right. Then they're using, because it's a Z3 bottom end, that's got the Z3 rotating assembly, so the rods are stronger, right? So more RPM thrown at them is not a big deal. Now, am I scared to rev out my A3 block to 8,000 or 8.5? Not really, but this is not the case of what they'd rev to do. They wound up revving their block all the way up to 9,000 RPMs. That's so 9,000 RPMs. With high compression and a ported and polished head. That's fucking a big difference. That's not a fucking A3 bolt-on VTEC killer setup. So now the huge factor, the one big key ingredient that also defines this power level is not mentioned, right? They didn't mention it. They had the video where they tuned the car is broken up in a multiple tuning days, right? One, they made like 211 or 216 wheel horsepower, some shit like that. But it turns out the dude put contaminated E85 in the system. Now, we don't know whether they tuned on E85 eventually, or they tuned on premium pump gas, 93 or 91, whichever the state they're at, right? So that's a huge difference too. If they tuned on E85, that could easily make up 20-something horsepower right there. In that kind of setup, I wouldn't imagine a huge gain from E85, but still a gain nonetheless, right? So, that's a big thing. Now, I do believe that they've tuned on 91 or 93 premium pump gas. Now, the reason why I believe this is the case is because they did mention, like, not only did they mention the debris, but they also mentioned the fact that it was breaking up really bad the idle on the dyno. Now, if they didn't have big enough injectors using the ED5, that would be a problem. So E85 with the wrong size injectors could definitely be a hindrance and not a plus. So the way they were mentioning the fact that it was breaking up really bad, that makes me believe that they did eventually tune on 91 or 93, which is extremely impressive. Okay, so you followed me this long. I deliberately kept the fucking the numbers vague as clickbait. Yes, I did. But they wound up making 251 wheel horsepower and like 179 foot-pound torque. That is really fucking good. But, you know, like I said, aftermarket springs retainers so they can rev the fuck out of it, and a Z3 block, which is very similar to the lines of what I'm doing. I'm using a Z3 block, but the block itself doesn't really matter. It's the rotating assembly. The EP3 rods or the A3 rods with the Type S pistons. Now, the rods the only limiting factor on the rods is like how safely I can, you know, my rev safe limiter, you know, safe rev limiter, right? But at the end of the day, the big difference there is the compression. So I'm using the Type S piston, so it'll be the same compression as their block. So very similar setup. And Z3 cams as well, which is what they used, I do believe. Now, the big difference between me and them and what they're doing is I'm not doing my valve train. That's expensive. That's an expensive mod. This is supposed to be a trash build for me. I'm not going to do the valve train, so if I do rev to 8.5 will be my absolute limit, and that's not something that I will be doing soon. If I set the rev limiter at 8.5, it's just because I want to milk out as much power as possible for the dyno, and when I'm driving it, I'm not going to be revving it that high on a regular basis. And I guess that even if I'm fucking with somebody racing on the street or whatnot, 8.5 will be something I only do if the race is mad close, right? So there's that. I'm not going to have the 9,000 RPM revving capability, so that's going to limit my build. Also, they did in-house porting polishing, which is great. They port matched the gasket and you know, and polished inside, and it looked really good when they were finished with it. This is something I've been wanting to do for a long time. I just haven't committed, haven't pulled the trigger. It's something that's very time consuming, and I want to put this build together as quickly as possible. So it's not something I'm going to fuck with right now. But they started with a K24A1 head, I do believe. Now they said that from their research, the rumor has it is that the CRV head has the same flow rate as a Type S head. Now I don't know if that's true. That's the first time I've ever heard that. Never looked into it that much. I never looked into it at all. That's the first time I ever heard that. But that really goes out the window anyway once they did their porting polishing. Thereafter, that's above and beyond what it's come with. And Mike says in the video that the head porting wound up being good enough that it outflowed a Type S head. So when people do the K24, K20, they're going with the K20 head because it flows better than the K24 head. So not only did they use a higher flowing head, they outflowed the higher flowing head. So 251 horsepower with this setup is definitely believable for me. Like I just talked about early in the AM, I'm doing my own build, and I would expect 215 to 220 wheel horsepower, possibly 230. But now that I'm seeing the work that they did on theirs and considering what I'm doing on mine, I would imagine that I would be happy with 220 wheel horsepower. Like if I make 220 on this setup, I will be happy with that. I definitely will attribute the porting polish work as a major factor in power and whatnot. Is it possible I still make 230? I guess maybe it's possible, but I'm not holding my breath for that. If I make 220 to 225, man, I'll be fucking extremely happy because this is gonna be literally a junk engine throw together for me. So anyway, I just wanted to clarify that, you know, because that's definitely the highest wheel horsepower I've ever heard for that VTEC killer setup. If they didn't tune on E85 and they go back and retune on E85, I definitely see a big gain that they could get from that with the port polished head and the higher compression and the higher rev limit. So I'd be curious to see what the fuck that eventually winds up doing overall. But at the end of the day, this is still not a go-to build. These guys build this similar, like the reason why I'm building mine. I have a whole bunch of parts laying around. It's easy for me to do this build. They happen, Mike had a Z3 block because he took the head off of it to put on his K24. So he just happened to have that block already sitting around available, and they had the CRV head, and they just, you know, shot the shit together as an experiment type deal. And I can get with that and I experiment with that. But as this is going to be a purpose built, I guess the only way that I can see somebody like wanting to do this kind of build is if you're deliberately going for that low BS sound, because the more I listen to that idle, the more I'm starting to appreciate it. And I think the main reason why I'm starting to dig this at all is just because of the fact that I'm seriously starting to get engrossed with this all motor thing. Like, I've always been a big force injection turbo guy, and I still am. I still think that my big hero cars will, you know, for a long time will be boost. They'll be my fast cars just because they're so much cheaper and easier to get big horsepower numbers with the turbo. But I think I definitely, as time goes by and I start making my money again and everything, I want to focus on all motor. An all motor kill is just that much more rewarding when you're fucking big and beating big horsepower cars with an NA setup. And so I like the Lobe sound. The more I listen to that K20 8th VTEC killer idle, the more I'm starting to dig it. It's not really obnoxious. It sounds really good. And it's definitely something that would get your attention. If you roll around the street and people will see that at the stoplight or whatnot, they're going to break neck. They're going to want to know, what the fuck is that? So I'm starting to really appreciate that kind of setup, and I'm looking forward to doing this build. Yeah, definitely looking forward to it, guys. I'll say so kind of like a good thing. I took the interview yesterday. I told you guys that company just hit me back up. Now they're offering 23, which is what you know, right around what I was making a rider, offering $23 an hour. I did tell him that, you know, he's like, well, we know that you said that you were looking at other companies or whatnot. What do you think? I was like, hey, they're offering me $24.50, but they're taking a really long time on my background check. I'll take your 23 if you can beat them. Whichever you guys give me a start date faster is whichever one I'm going to go with. Now, he did say that he was going to call back his team and talk to them, so they might be working up another offer to offer me more money. I'm not 100% sure. At this point, I really don't give a fuck. I just want to get back to working. So I expect a call back again from them either later on today or possibly tomorrow, because the guy hit me back up fast. Out of all the people I've talked to, these two that are in competition right now are the ones that replied very quickly to me. It's just that, you know, the background check process. And I did mention the fact that I've lived in 3 different states in 10 years in the past decade, so that's the reason why this is dragging. Even he said, yes, I can understand why the process is taking so long. But anyway, yeah, guys, that's a little personal note. I just wanted to say that things are going to be going back going into next month. At whether it's one job or another, out of these 3, money will be coming again, and I'm going to be going full steam ahead on this VTEC killer thing. I'm definitely looking forward to getting into it in a NAK series, and looking to see how much power I can make, and looking to use this car as practice for the track. All right, guys. So thanks for watching, and peace. Oh, I guess a real quick mention, I'm getting ready to leave right now to go to the machine shop. These assholes had my pistons and shit ready. They just didn't call me, man. But I'm going to do that, so that's another incentive to get this fucking K off the stand, so that way I can do this goddamn single cam. Alright, guys, again, thanks for watching, and talk to y'all later.